Welcome to UiQ TV. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jeff Clemo. I'm a data center specialist here at Ultima, and I'm joined by Mark Lucas, a sales engineer from Commvault, and Simon Lewis, a solutions consultant from Hitachi. Thank you both very much for joining me this morning. Today we're going to be talking about backup and disaster recovery and how the changing world of ransomware and the likes affects our best practices today. I guess we can kick off with tape, which is pretty ubiquitous in the backup world. A lot of customers that we speak to still use tape. I guess there's a place for it. Is it suitable?
Yeah, I'd say first off, we need to consider the recovery point objective and recovery time objective. Those are sort of guiding principles of data protection. And if tape still satisfies those requirements, it's still the cheapest form of storage. It plays well in sustainability, but increasingly I think our customers are finding that it doesn't meet those changing RPO and RTO requirements.
Okay, and can you elaborate a little bit on that? Perhaps what is it they need to be able to recover more quickly nowadays, or it was historically very viable. Is ransomware changing that perhaps?
Yeah, I would say so. The world has changed. You know, we're now talking about 24/7, always on businesses rather than Monday to Friday. But yeah, ransomware has been a key factor in I guess, re-evaluating data protection from the ground up.
Perfect, thank you. Mark, you've been with Commvault for a while now, I think?
Almost 9 years.
Great. So you've seen a lot of change in that time, I'd imagine. I guess immutability is something we talk a lot about at the moment. Obviously, ransomware, encrypting the data, so immutability is quite important. How is that something that Commvault addresses? What have you seen the change with regards to that kind of these days?
Well, with us, it's sort of immutability by default. And when we're working with storage partners, for example, with Hitachi, it's making sure that what we do integrates very, very nicely with what they do. Obviously immutability and also air gapping are incredibly important to customers. So it's something that, again, with a joint alliance that we have with Hitachi, it's making sure that we can help address those needs for them where it's right for the customer. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess just going back to basics, immutability means kind of object lock, kind of S3 worm, write once, read many, and that means that essentially the data once backed up cannot be changed. So it's essentially immune to kind of ransomware attacks on the backup, which I believe is quite a common target for attackers. Is that correct?
It is. It's becoming an increasingly popular target. I mean, there's now double, triple extortion attacks for ransomware. And one of the things that they're doing is taking out the backup safety net whenever they can. I think it's like 93% of ransomware attacks are going for the backup. So immutability is one way to, one of the multi-layered ways of helping to stop that from happening.
Yeah, it can be. With the adoption of sort of hybrid, multi-cloud, increasingly we're seeing backup being moved to public cloud. I think we just need to consider the cost and sometimes the hidden cost of backup in public cloud.
Egress.
Typically, yeah. So typically it's very cheap to store the data in public cloud, but then it's that egress cost when you actually want to read it. This is not a long-term archive. This is data that you're expecting to have to read on occasion.
And I guess for regulated industries, we have to store the data for 7 years or longer. Yeah, like you said, the costs can add up if you're backing up weekly, monthly, and having to store it, for very long periods of time, I suppose. So.
We've had solutions in our product for quite some time because GDPR, right from the off, we knew it was like a leviathan looming in the background. So yeah, we've got solutions in our products, a separate set of solutions that can help with. I think we've got the current name for the solution is risk analysis, where it can also analyse the data from a compliance perspective, help identify that sort of personal data, but also give the right people the access to be able to go in and, so from a right to be forgotten perspective, and then delete that data from the backup to make sure it doesn't rear its ugly head later on.
I think you mentioned it has the ability to sort of redact the data upon rehydration, I suppose. Though if you have to restore a backup, you can do so, still being compliant with the right to be forgotten on the redacted data essentially.
Yeah, and there's not many backup vendors out there that have that capability as well. So it's nice to have something that's unique.
And you can't do it with tape either, obviously, because
Correct.
inherently, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But again, I think going back to what Simon was saying earlier, that with tape, it's when it's right for the customer, and yeah, they need to think about if there is data that they want to potentially get rid of later on, like right to be forgotten request, to take that into consideration. Is tape going to be the right target for it?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Holistically is the right term, because where we have data that spans on-prem and public multi-cloud, effectively you've got applications, distributed applications, data quite literally everywhere. And so you need to take that holistic approach to ensure that you're backing that data up, protecting that data, and effectively doing so with a solution that gives you a single source of truth, regardless of where that data resides.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, adding to that single pane of glass is vitally important, but when I've been talking to a lot of customers about what they're doing with the cloud, they automatically think about adopting the cloud native tools. And they have their place. I'm not saying not to use them, but it's thinking about things like, do they dedupe the data when it's being moved from on-prem to the cloud? Typically not. There was an example of a customer where they had a lot of data, 11 petabytes of data. When it went through our dedupe and compression, that went to 2 petabytes. And I'm sure that customer would have much preferred 2 petabytes being moved to the cloud rather than 11 petabytes. Then there's the security aspect as well. Is the data going to be encrypted? Does it think about additional ransomware security features to make sure that the data's safe when it's in transit at the same time?
And I guess also if your primary workloads are in Azure, backing them up, or AWS, GCP, backing them up to that same cloud is perhaps not necessarily the best practice.
Correct. You're putting all your eggs into one basket, because you typically find with these cloud and SaaS native backup tools that there's no separation between where the data lives and where they're actually doing their work. So at the time you need it the most, when you've lost your data, you've also lost your backup safety net. So it makes sense to have your data isolated from a backup perspective. Plus, multi-cloud is what customers are really trying to achieve now. So if you're using, for example, an Azure native backup tool, then it's going to keep you in that Azure ecosystem. Yeah. Ideally, you want something that means you can move your data between clouds or adopt multi-cloud.
Perfect, thank you.
You know, we've touched on data protection, we've talked about the ransomware threat. So I think it's important that customers go back to ground zero, reevaluate their data protection requirements, ensure that they can recover for traditional use cases, but also look at their ransomware readiness position, and also have the ability to rehearse a ransomware recovery on a regular basis.
Test it,
Yeah, so the more often you do that, the better you get at it.
Practice makes perfect, yeah, that makes
Exactly.
sense. And don't bury your head in the sand, I suppose. Another one, we were having the conversation earlier, you often speak to customers and they say, yes, we know that things aren't perfect, but fine, okay, good, thank you. And Mark?
Totally sort of echo what Simon said there, that it is going back to basics. It's making sure that you've got the right people talking to one another internally. You want to make sure that you get your infrastructure team and your security team sitting down with a blank piece of paper, because now they've got a lot of common objectives over backup and disaster recovery, and making sure that it's as secure as possible from a backup and data management perspective. And also making sure that it's partnering with the right storage partner, because I think for me it makes a huge amount of sense to talk to, for example, Commvault and Hitachi together, because there's a lot we can do together. We've got an alliance that's lasted for almost 20 years, so we can make sure that collectively we're helping your customers out as quickly as possible.
Perfect. So in addition to making sure you've got the right tools and products, it's also getting your internal teams to talk together, going back to basics. Good. Okay, no, I appreciate that. So that's a good piece of advice. Thank you. Well, I think that's probably it for this morning. So thank you very much for joining me, chaps. Really appreciate that.
Great.
Thank you for joining us on UiQ TV. Ultima does have a disaster recovery and backup assessment that's completely free of charge, offering that we'd like to offer our customers, where we can assist in all these areas. So there'll be a link in the relevant media. Please get in touch. Look forward to helping you out. Thanks.
Great, thank you.